Kia ora and welcome to the Niggly Niche Cast. I am Diggity Doodah Doc, aka Mr. Slippers, and I am here to talk through a bunch of rugby league things, as I always do, early in the week, later in the week, by my lonesome, just here to chat some footy. We have New Zealand Aotearoa Warriors taking on the St. George Illawarra Dragons. That is part of the NRL's Magic Round, which is all pretty damn exciting if you ask me. And we also have a couple of interesting selections in the residence teams for New South Wales and Queensland. We do have Kiwi NRL reserve graders in those respective teams because they're not like state of origin, so you can still be Kiwis eligible and play for the residence team. I think last year there were a couple of Warriors in the New South team as well, New South Wales team. So that's kind of interesting. And we have a Warriors jersey flag team as well as the full Kiwi NRL rundown. You know the deal. If you like the Niche Case, if you like the Niche Cast, if you like what we're doing, support us on Patreon or head anywhere else that you can to support us and help us do our thing. Always open to ideas and different little ways to support the Niche Case as well. Otherwise, listen up, use your tarangas, and let's chat some rugby league. The Warriors. Your Warriors. They have welcomed Kodi Nikorima into the fold. He's starting alongside Blake Green. And you also have a couple of other changes. You've got no Issac Luke. He's on the reserves list. Although, there's nothing to stop Issac Luke being included late in the picture. Like, I'm kind of in a position where I just don't know what Stephen Kearney's up to with a lot of these selections. I can't rationally come up with a case to drop Issac Luke. I think a lot of people target him and make him a scapegoat for a few things. But Issac Luke's statistics aren't any worse than a bunch of other Warriors, and they actually rank kind of highly among the top hookers in the NRL. Like, he's not peak Issac Luke, but he's doing a solid job, and it's just a weird situation that leads me to believe that again, I'm not here to try and explain Stephen Kearney's antics, because he's just got some weird old selections, does Coach Kearney. But I do think maybe it's just a case of giving Issac Luke a breather. We know that his minutes have been down to start this season. He's been battling niggly injuries, and maybe it's just a good opportunity just to leave him in Auckland and not bring him over to Australia. So I wouldn't go all in on him being dramatically dropped. I wrote about this in my Diary of a Warriors Fan entry, so check that out if you want a bit more of a dive into some Issac Luke stats. And yeah, I just don't think it's a case of being dropped. Like, if Issac Luke is being dropped, a lot of other Warriors should also be dropped, because Issac Luke is not playing any worse than other Warriors. No Adam Blair either. And that means that you've got Isaiah Papali'i and Tohu Harris on the edges, Lachlan Burr starting at lock, and Lingy Sau and Carl Lawton come onto the bench. Jazz Tavanga wasn't there last week. He comes onto the bench for this week. And Lingy Sau's been playing on the edge in reserve grade for the reserve grade Warriors, so he could cover edge, but I do expect him to play through the middle. And Carl Lawton is on the bench. What kind of workload he gets will be interesting. At least with Roach and Lawton, you're going to have a bit more energy than what Issac Luke offers. But that's not a full Hundies, like, that's awesome type of thing, because without Issac Luke, you miss out on 1 to 2 kicks, maybe 3 kicks a game, which is very instrumental when Issac Luke is at his best, is his kicking game. But they do welcome in Kodi Nikorima, playing alongside Blake Green and in the halves, and that at least gives the Warriors 2 kickers either side of the ruck. I do have some Nikorima stats I do want to talk about just here, because the Warriors have brought in Nikorima into their team, and Nikorima instantaneously leads the Warriors in missed tackles. So obviously a lot of those missed tackles haven't come while he's been at the Warriors, but Kodi Nikorima averages 4.4 missed tackles per game, and that is enough to have him ranked first Peter Hiku averages 3 missed tackles a game. Adam Kieran averages 3 missed tackles a game. And then you got Isaiah Papali'i 2.9, Tohu Harris 2.5. What's interesting here is that Kodi Nikorima is probably going to play on the right edge with Blake Green playing on the left edge. And I think you're still going to see Tohu Harris play on the left, which is going to have Isaiah Papali'i at right edge, and then you're going to have probably Patrick Herbert playing right centre. Kodi Nikorima's first in missed tackles. Isaiah Papali'i is fourth in missed tackles. And then Patrick Herbert's been pretty good defensively to start his NRL career, but he's one of 8 Warriors players who averages 2 or more missed tackles per game. So Patrick Herbert is 8th. Now, those are 3 players, so Patrick Herbert, Isaiah Papali'i, and Kodi Nikorima. If they're all defending on the right edge for the Warriors, those, statistically, they are 3 of the worst tacklers in the Warriors. Now, even if it's not quite bang on correct, so maybe Peter Hiku's playing right centre, well, he's second in missed tackles. Maybe Tohu Harris plays right edge forward, well, he's 5th in missed tackles. So either way, you're going to have Kodi Nikorima and Patrick Herbert probably. Well, Kodi Nikorima is going to be defending alongside defenders who are struggling. And that's reflective of how the Warriors are trucking along at the moment, is the fact that you've got edge players leading the missed tackle count. You'd probably rather have that than players in the middle, because if your middle's being opened up consistently, you're fucked. But this isn't a Warriors team that has the confidence to stop other teams scoring points, to repel raids on their goal line, and other teams can just hit their edges. Chuck in Kodi Nikorima to that edge defense, and we've got a weird situation where the Warriors defensively could be worse, which isn't good. But we do have, the Warriors' defense under Stephen Kearney has been pretty good last season. In patches, we saw what it could do, but it hasn't kicked on to any great level. And so, there's something there with Stephen Kearney coaching this team, that they could be good defensively, but they're not. But they could be. So it's interesting to see which direction they go in now. But at the very least, you've brought in Kodi Nikorima, and he should help the Warriors score a few points. He averages 4.4 kicks as well. And Blake Green, he averages 11.2. So you're going to have Chanel Harris-Tavita. Here's a little interesting little niche cast exclusive. Blake Green averaged 11.2 kicks. Chanel Harris-Tavita averaged 7.2. And Adam Kieran averaged 5. So Harris-Tavita, he was busy in the kicking department. Didn't play too much footy, though, alongside Blake Green. Kodi Nikorima at the Broncos, he only averaged 4.4 kicks a game. So he hasn't exactly been a busy kicker at the Broncos, and most of that went to Anthony Milford. So the balance of kicking and playmaking, touches, that sort of stuff will be very interesting to look at after this game up against the Dragons, just to see the balance of how Nikorima and Green are playing. You've got stylistic things like which edge they play on predominantly, how Roger Tuivasa-Sheck fits in, like whether he pops up on the left edge, the right edge, or just sticks to the middle and goes either side. And then you got like more statistical ideas, such as the split in touches, who's doing most of the kicking, who's doing most of the running, who's passing, and those sorts of things that I will touch on in my review of this game. With regards to how the game might play out, the Corey Norman absence for the Dragons is really important for the Warriors, because that's going to... Obviously, Corey Norman is a class player, and it takes out a major left foot kicking game for the Dragons. So you got Jai Field partnering Ben Hunt in the halves there. And any Dragons team without Corey Norman at this stage and Gareth Widdop is going to be a bit weaker, and that presents an opportunity for the Warriors. The battle of the forward pack will be interesting as well, because the Dragons don't have the biggest forward pack, and they are more of a Warriors type of forward pack in the sense that they are very mobile, lots of footwork, speed, and a bit of skill as well. And we've seen how the Warriors, their forward pack can match up nicely against some other forward packs and then struggle. Really struggle. Like they struggled against the Knights last week, who had the balance of size and mobility sorted. This Dragons forward pack kind of presents a similar challenge. Like the Warriors won't have any benefit in being more mobile, because the Dragons forward pack's pretty mobile as well. You're not coming up against a forward pack of men mountains, monstrous creatures, beastly dudes. You're coming up against a forward pack that gets around the park, they run hard, they're aggressive, and that's how they dominate other teams. So how does that match up for the Warriors forward pack? I'm very interested to see, because there's not much of an advantage in coming in smaller with a more mobile forward pack. You do have a bit more size on the bench with Flingy Sal. Bunty Arfo is a solid unit as well. And obviously you got Lisanar Mal coming up against his old club. He will be eager to make an impression also. Battle of the Centres, you got Tim Laffey, I think, plays as left centre, maybe, don't quote me on this, and that will mean a line-up against Patrick Herbert, I believe, and then you're going to have Peter Hiku coming up against Zach Lomax. Like, we've seen what Patrick Herbert did against Will Chambers, but now there's going to be a bit more footage, a bit more information on Patrick Herbert moving forward. So it's one thing to expect him, or not to expect him, but it's one thing for Patrick Herbert to come out in his debut game, first game of his career, and be really good defensively. What's going to happen when other teams have a couple of games film to isolate your weaknesses, to target different areas of your game as well? And Tim Laffey, big, good footwork, good hands, can get an offload in. He could be an interesting challenge for Patrick Herbert. Like, it's far too early to come out and say Patrick Herbert's a fantastic centre. Like, we can all see that he's got plenty of talent, but he's got to play at a certain level, especially defensively. He's got to maintain and sustain a certain level of defensive prowess in the NRL to earn that reputation. Right now, he's had a few good defensive performances, maybe only one good defensive performance, and how he goes against a Dragons team that will definitely look to trouble the Warriors out on the edges, as I said before. Edge defense, lots of missed tackles out there. This Dragons team will hit the Warriors' edges. You got Tyson Frizzell on one edge, you got Tarek Sims on the other edge, and that's going to be very interesting how the Warriors handle that defensively, and if they can. Maybe it's not a case of how, it's a matter of can they handle them defensively. There is this battle of defense versus points, and the Warriors are a type of team where sometimes the defense doesn't matter because they can score more points than their opposition. What we're dealing with now is a Warriors team that doesn't score points. Imagine that, a Warriors team that doesn't score points. That's kind of what you need to do, is score the points. The Warriors are tied for 7th with the Dragons in scoring points. They've scored 148 points this season. Couple of good kicking game. You got tall wingers, so there's a couple of points there. Those are easy points to come by. But what I'm talking about here is the clinical nature of the Warriors, where they set up a play, hit their edge, score some points, or they can go razzle-dazzle, get an offload, work the defence over, shift the footy around, score some points. That was their last season. They had options. They had different ways they could break another team down. This season, it's been super clunky. It's been slow motion. It's been unorganised. And having Kodi Nikorima and Blake Green should help that a lot. It should help them a lot. And they should be able to score at least 12 points a game. ideally they should be able to score more than 20 points a game, just with the team they have, the attacking prowess they have, and what they could be capable in attack, in terms of like how they go about playing their footy when they are playing well. But this Warriors team doesn't really have any type of identity. They have no confidence, and we don't know what this Warriors team is up to. That's kind of the most frustrating thing about the Warriors, is how are you trying to play footy? You're not a defensive team. You're not super slick in attack at the moment. You're just a bit of a nothing team. That's an idea I've been hammering home this week in particular, is just how the Warriors don't really have any identity. They don't have, this is how the Warriors play their footy. No one knows how this Warriors team plays their footy. There's no, even the offloads. Yeah, they love an offload, but that doesn't lead to points. It's not successful. Let me just check those offloads. So we know the Warriors are tied for 7th in points. They are 3rd in offloads. So there's not really any correlation between offloads and points scored. There's no Warriors identity. There is no Warriors identity. That's troubling. That sucks. So I want to see the Warriors start to establish that identity, and ideally against the Dragons this week. There's no better opportunity to play the Dragons. You're not at home. You're playing them in Brisbane. I don't know if this is a Warriors home game. I think it might be. Don't even know if they're having home games or whatever. But you're playing the Dragons in Brisbane. You're playing the Dragons in Brisbane without Gareth Widdop or Corey Norman. This should be a great chance for the Warriors to gain a bit of confidence, get a win against a decent team. Not an amazing team, but a decent team. And just start to settle into some processes. Start to settle into some patterns. Because this is also a reason not to panic, not to get too down on the Warriors right now. A lot of injuries to start the season, players in and out, different things happening. You had the whole Kodi Nikorima situation. It's hard to establish your identity when there are so many changes on a week-to-week basis. And we've already seen new faces come in, Patrick Herbert, different guys settling into different roles. Hopefully we start to lay some foundations of how the Warriors are playing their footy. It started so well against the Bulldogs. That was my whole idea against the Bulldogs in round 1, was we saw the building blocks for how this Warriors team could be good. No steps forward have been taken since round 1. And I'll leave it at that. We also have a Warriors jersey flag team who are playing someone. There's no reserve grade because we do have those residence games, so there's no reserve grade, just jersey flag. And that means a couple of the big dogs from the Warriors reserve grade team are dropping down to play jersey flag. So you got Emmanuel Tuimavave Gerard at fullback, Celestino Ravatamata on the wing, as well as Edward Kosi, Kale Iro and Patrick Elia are your centres. Paul Turner coming back down to play in the halves alongside Sione Moala. Philip Makatoa, Wesley Vaikoso and Tyler Slade are the middle forwards. Sean Mullaney at hooker. Brody Tamarua and Tom Ale are your edge forwards. On the bench, you got Temple Kalepo, Isaiah Wagner, Junior Pua, Jairus Glamuzina and Michael Lemafa is 18th man. So guys like Philip Makatoa, Tom Ale, they are playing jersey flag. We know Paul Turner has previously played fullback, I think, and maybe a bit of halves in reserve grade. So this is a pretty damn good jersey flag team for the Warriors. Couple of trends have emerged in just following this flag team. The wings are constantly rotated, so you got Edward Kosi and Celestino Ravatamata on the wings at the moment. You otherwise also have Harley Maynard has been in there, and at fullback you have previously had William Whakatomafe, which then pushes Emmanuel Tuimavave to the wing. So you've got like 4 wingers all competing for game time in the Jersey Flegg team. Elia and Ido in the centres have been there pretty much all season. And then you've got the halves rotating, so Paul Turner and Sione Moala in the halves this week. Last week it was Paul Turner and Casey Smith. And just a couple of things like that where you've got rotation happening. You've got different players coming in and out. Obviously, I don't know too much about the injury situations there, so I don't know if it's injury enforced or not, but just a couple of things there to keep an eye on is the rotation of the wingers and game time for the three halves, Paul Turner, Sione Moala, and Casey Smith. The Jersey Flegg Warriors, they are playing the Sydney Roosters at Leichhardt Oval in Sydney on Sunday. That's pretty cool. Philip Makatoa has been with the Roosters before as well. And then you have a couple of reserve graders. I don't need to talk about that. There's no reserve grade this weekend because we got the residents footy. Queensland residents. Kiwi NRL players, you got Deluise Hoita at centre, and he's the only Kiwi NRL reserve grader in the Queensland residents team. There was another one, but I'll touch on him in a jiffy. And then with New South Wales, you got a few more. So you got Ruben Rennie, Mounties centre. He is at centre for the residents, and Morgan Harper. He is from the Bulldogs, and he is centre for the residents of New South Wales. Morgan Harper is extremely similar to Remus Smith, who is the winger for the Bulldogs. Like, I would love to see Harper playing centre and Remus Smith on his wing in the NRL one day, because no one will be able to tell the difference. Renouf Tu'uamanga, he is from the Bulldogs. He's in the residents team as well. I think he's on the bench, and that kind of rounds it up for the Kiwi NRL reserve graders who have made New South Wales residents. Let's slide into some NRL discussion, and I'll quickly roll through my Kiwi NRL previews of these games. Starting with Gold Coast Titans versus Sharks. I won't actually talk about this game because it's being recorded tonight. I'm recording this Thursday afternoon, so by the time you listen to this, it would have probably happened. But the thing here is if you're watching this game, remember Jesse Arthurs, who has been named on the bench for the Gold Coast Titans, was initially named in the Queensland residents team at fullback. He's been tearing up at centre for the Burleigh Bears in reserve grade up in Queensland. He was born in Auckland, went to the Gold Coast as a young lad, like, around 10, whatever, and has made a couple of Queensland teams. He's also been in the Tohu Harris program, so I don't really know where his eligibility sits, but at this stage he's a Kiwi NRL player, and he's on the bench for the Gold Coast Titans, filling a role that Philip Sammy had previously played to start the season, and he's a very interesting prospect for the Gold Coast Titans. Someone to keep an eye on. Very tall, very lanky, and has been tearing up reserve grade for the Burleigh Bears. That game is tonight, so we'll move on. Tigers versus Panthers. Fairly stock standard Tigers team here. Issac Masters in centre, Benji Marshall in the halves, Ben Martellino at prop. The Tigers' yarns here is the demise of their Kiwi NRL players. Michael Cam got caught up in an off-field situation, and then Elijah Taylor and Russell Packer are both in the reserves for this week, kind of on the outer at the Tigers at the moment under Michael Maguire. So that's Tigers have previously had plenty of Kiwi NRL players. At the moment, just form and performance-wise, they're struggling. So you got Issac Masters and Benji Marshall holding it down. Panthers, you got Dean Farday coming back at centre. Caleb Aikens is still at fullback, and then you got Dallin Waitane-Zelezniak on the wing. James Fisher-Harris moves to the edge, and then you got Sione Katoa from Wellington. He is on the bench. I wrote about Katoa, Manasi Fainu, and Saliva Havili earlier this week, so check that out on the website. Tongan hookers all competing for a spot. Caleb Aikens is still at fullback, which is apparently pushing Dylan Edwards out of the Penrith Panthers at the moment because Ivan Cleary just wants Caleb Aikens at fullback, which is a beautiful thing for our Kiwi NRL perspective. And we may have Dean Whare coming up directly against Easton Masters in the centres, which is of some interest considering that Issac Masters and Joseph Manu were the Kiwi centre pairing last year. Dean Whare might have something to say about that. Dean Whare might want to chuck on that Kiwis jersey again, re-establish himself as one of the best centres in the world. Well, he's got to rack up a few really good performances, and even if he doesn't line up against Issac Masters, they'll be easier to compare because they're in the same game. Seagulls versus Broncos. Seagulls have Tohu Harris starting at prop, Manasi Final at hooker, and that's it. Zach Docker-Clay is still on the reserves bench as well. Broncos, just Alex Glenn because Jermaine Isako's been cut. And yeah, that's it for the Broncos. Just Alex Glenn. Kodi Nikorima moved to the Warriors. Jordan Kau moved to the Cowboys. Isako's out of favour. And it's just Alex Glenn remaining. Isako, another player who was in the Kiwis squad last year and settled onto a wing spot, but hasn't been playing all that well to start this season. And you've got Jordan Rapana coming back. So my top Kiwis wing pair at the moment is probably Ken Mamalo and Jordan Rapana. Maybe Dylan Watene-Zelezniak probably gets in there, but I like Ken Mamalo as an international winger because of that big body, that powerful running game. Isako is behind all three of those dudes and isn't playing very well at the moment either. So interesting times for Jermaine Isako. Couple of whispers that other clubs are chasing him as well, and as long as he's not playing, let alone playing well for the Broncos, he's not going to be in Kiwis contention. Bulldogs versus Knights. Remus Smith on the wing for the Bulldogs, Jeremy Marshall-King at hooker, Kodi Harawira-Naera on an edge. Manu Brown is still on the bench for the Bulldogs, and Kieran Foran is sniffing around a return as well. Knights have Sean Kenny-Dow, Danny Levi in their normal positions. And then you've got Herman Esse and James Gavey on the bench for the Knights, as well as Mason Leno. There will be twists and turns with the Bulldogs team. I think Harawira-Naera's been ruled out via injury and a couple of other things. Bulldogs are a team to keep an eye on because their coach Dean Pay's making lots of changes, which could present a few interesting opportunities for various Kiwi NRL players, as we've seen with Manu Brown coming onto the bench for recent excursions of footy. On the reserves list for the Bulldogs, you got Ofahiki Ogden and Kieran Foran. I reckon they will both play. Ofahiki Ogden was fantastic last week for the Bulldogs, and he should be there. Warriors versus Dragons. Dragons just have Jordan Pereira as per usual. Storm versus Eels. Storm got their usual contingent, nothing crazy here. Eels, Takarangi at centre, Marata Niukore on an edge, and then you got the bench of Peneterapo and Manu Ma'u as well. This will be a very interesting game. Eels are trucking along pretty nicely at the moment, coming up against a Storm team that isn't trucking along as good, but still one of the best teams in the NRL. They just aren't hitting their kind of best form at this stage, some of which could stem from Nelson Asafa-Solomona not being at his best. He isn't running anywhere near his best work in terms of carting the footy up. He's not averaging close to 10 metres per run. I wrote about this in the written encyclopedia, and his statistics are just aren't what I have come to expect from big nasty Nas in your area about to cause mass hysteria. Jerome Hughes still at fullback, which I like to see as well. I like the Storm, and I don't think anyone should be thinking that the Storm are slipping away at any stage of the year because they still are good at rugby league. Roosters versus Raiders could be like the game of the round because the Raiders are doing damn well. Raiders have Nickel Clockstead at fullback, Jordan Rapana on the wing, and then Saliva Havili and Iosia Soliola on the bench, as well as Bailey Simonson, who offers a bit of outside back cover, could get a run through the middle as well. Interesting. Roosters settled as always. Joseph Manu at centre, Jared Wairea-Hargreaves, Siosua Tokiaho, and Issac Luke through the middle. And then you got Sitili Tuponuia, who is taking his opportunities and then some for the Roosters. He's settled into a bench spot for the Chooks, playing through the middle predominantly, and that's a great thing for Sitili Tuponuia, Maris Saints Jr. That middle of Issac Luke, like that's the best forward pack in the NRL. Wairea-Hargreaves, Tokiaho, and Issac Luke through the middle. Then on the edges, you got Boy Corner and Angus Crichton. Shit the bed. But of course, it all starts with those Kiwi NRL forwards through the middle, up the guts for the Roosters. Rabbitohs versus Cowboys on the Sunday. Rabbitohs, nobody. Nobody from the Kiwi NRL gang except for Mawane Hiroti on the reserves list. Cowboys have Jordan Kahu at fullback, Jason Tamalolo in the middle, and that's it for the Cowboys. Interesting game last week for the Cowboys. I think they defeated Gold Coast Titans, and you had really good stats. Jordan Kahu had, I think he had around about 10 runs for over 100 metres. Tamalolo, 20 runs, 200 metres, averaging 10 metres per run. Absolutely monstrous performance from the South Auckland Rhinoceros. I'm not sure that either is sustainable. Jordan Kahu's up and down. I'd love for Jordan Kahu to establish himself as the Cowboys' fullback with really dominant displays from fullback. He's got good hands. He's got, skills. He's a competent runner of the footy. It's just whether he has the X factor to really shine at fullback and add to the Cowboys' attacking structures and kind of off-the-cuff, eyes-up footy as well. I want that to happen for Kahu. I've liked Kahu for a long time, and I want him to start really tapping into his full potential as a footy player, and that is the best position for that is at fullback. I just haven't really seen anything consistently. Like last week was a really good game for Kahu, but it was one game, and at fullback for the Cowboys, he hasn't been able to string those good games together. So interesting thing to watch out for there. And then you have Jason Taumalolo, who was absolutely fantastic last week in returning for the Cowboys. But I did see that he had a fairly low tackle count. I just want to check this to make sure I got it right. And this won't be the case against the Rabbitohs. The Rabbitohs will not let Jason Taumalolo park up his deck chair in the middle against the Rabbitohs. Jason Taumalolo making 20 tackles versus the Gold Coast Titans. 20 tackles in 60 minutes of footy. If you're the Rabbitohs and you are playing with Sam Burgess, John Sutton, the Burgess twins, you got Cameron Murray, who's a very good young baller as well, the Rabbitohs will be looking to make Jason Taumalolo rack up 30 tackles. Let's see how Jason Taumalolo goes making 35 tackles. Can he still churn out 20 runs for 200 metres? That's the big conundrum at this stage of the season and kind of Taumalolo's career, because it's one thing to, that's the thing about the Cowboys is then the battle turns to the Cowboys. How are the Cowboys going to ensure that Jason Taumalolo isn't having to be a workhorse through the middle? Does he defend a bit wider? Do they adjust a few things there? Rabbitohs, they will be wanting to make Jason Taumalolo get up around 35 tackles and then see what he can do from there. NRL Round 9, Magic Round in Brizzy. All teams in Brizzy. Lots of rugby league to enjoy this weekend. Warriors versus Dragons. You got residence footy as well. You got Jersey Fleek, and then you've got an abundance of Kiwi NRL. Just an abundance. There's no other word for it except abundance. Growing abundance. Enjoy it. Support the niche cast. Support the niche cast. And kia kaha. Stay blessed. Stay beautiful. Stay positive. We'll be back. Rugby League chit chat early next week. Peace out.